What's up, guys? I'm Nobody Special, and there was a lot of developments in the ongoing collapse of the Chinese real estate market recently. First, we had the People's Bank of China, in another sign of weakness, loosen restrictions on the use of presale funds, which will enable these developers to use money from the presales of some departments for other expenditures, which helps some people, screws everybody else. Also, a group of Evergrande's offshore credit holders got together and announced that they're threatening to take legal actions against Evergrande if the company doesn't seriously engage with the holders of those dollar-denominated bonds. And yet another developer, China Aoyuan, just announced that they'll be defaulting on several $100 million worth of bonds that they have coming due in the next few days. These developers are dropping like flies. You ready? Hit it. Thank you for joining me. I'm Jack Gamble, and I'm Nobody Special. And there was a lot of stories in the last day or two about the ongoing collapse of the Chinese real estate market. None of them are good for anybody, and it shows that this story is long from over. The collapse continues. More people are losing everything that they invest in these companies. More people are going to get screwed out of the apartments that they bought. And China's central bank is telegraphing a lot of weakness despite assurances from these regulators that everything is fine here. Clearly, that is not the case. Now, before we get into these stories, folks, I have to ask, could you please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and don't forget that notification bell. It really helps me out, and I would be forever in your debt. And now it is that wonderful time. We are going to shrink my big, fat melon of a head and get into some of these stories. And first is the big one. China reluctantly gives property market a break. And this is another sign of weakness by the People's Bank of China, or China's central bank. And even though they keep assuring us that everything is fine, when they take action like this, they're telling us that everything is not fine. And this came out just today. Reading from Reuters, China's tough stance on deleveraging the real estate industry is softening, however, reluctantly. The government will let property developers access much-needed funds from escrowed prepayments, building on surprise cuts to interest rates. It's a partial and imperfect solution, but options are running out. There were some expectations that cash-rich state-owned entities such as China Resources Land might pad the fall by snapping up assets and helping complete paused or pre-sold projects. Such rescues have not materialized, however. Property M&A contracted 75% in 2021 per state media. So China's central bank was hoping that some of these other developing companies that might have been in better shape would come in and gobble up their smaller competitors that were going out of business. That didn't happen. In early January, Beijing tried to revive enthusiasm by exempting credit use for distressed acquisitions from regulatory debt caps, but deals can only do so much. And this blew me away. A Refinitiv analysis suggests a whopping 3 billion square meters of projects were on pause as of June. Look, a square meter is about 11 square feet, so they're saying there is over 30 billion square feet of projects on hold as of June. That was 7 months ago. This situation has gotten so much worse. So we can only guess how many more billions or tens of billions of square footage of projects have gone on hold since this statistic was found. This situation is so much worse than they're letting on. 3 billion square meters of projects on pause as of 7 months ago, before this story really gained any legs. My goodness, it's worse than even I realized. Now, against a daunting reality, regulators are extending a lifeline by unfreezing down payments. That could free up as much as 3.6 trillion yuan, or $570 billion, that's a lot of money, to complete projects and pay suppliers, according to Breaking View's estimates. Local regulators may resist, worrying that companies will use the funds to meet obligations in other jurisdictions, but it'll ease liquidity crunches at healthier developers. So what they're saying here is these companies pre-sold apartments, right? They sold apartments that weren't even built yet. They took those down payments, and that money had been locked away in escrow so that they didn't misspend it, at least not all of it. So what this PBOC is doing is they're loosening those restrictions. They're letting the developers access that cash to pay their employees, to pay their contractors. The problem is now they don't have those funds in reserve to build the apartments that they promised. So yeah, they're helping some people, they're screwing others. This is a desperate move, all right? When they're loosening restrictions on escrows, that tells you things are much worse than they're letting on. Now, moving on, I saw this story also in Reuters. Evergrande creditors raise threat of action over default. And this is also dated today. A key group of China's Evergrande's international creditors said on Thursday they were ready to take all necessary actions to defend their rights if the property developer did not show more urgency to resolve a default. That is a threat that has fewer teeth than this guy. Evergrande is the world's most indebted property company with more than $300 billion in liabilities, which include nearly $20 billion of international bonds, all deemed to be in default after a run of missed payments last year. The creditor group, represented by the law firm Kirkland and Ellis and investment bank Moelis, said in a statement that it had to seriously consider enforcement action after a lack of engagement by the firm at the heart of China's property crisis. One of the creditor group's advisors later told Reuters that Evergrande's team had been in communication in response to the statement, which had stressed it was prepared to take all necessary actions to defend its legal rights. Look, I tried to warn these folks. I tried to warn you. You're holding hot garbage. Get out of these bonds. But some of these organizations, I don't know if it was greed or outright stupidity or a moral hazard, but somebody still went in and bought these bonds for pennies on the dollar when the market was telling us they were worthless. They bought them anyway. Now they're holding this crap. They're not going to get their money back, and they're threatening to sue in Chinese court, which means, guess what, folks? Evergrande is sitting on the other side of the border saying, nah, we're not paying you. And here is a shocking development here. Evergrande and its advisors at U.S. investment bank Houlihan Lokey declined to comment. And I am shocked that Evergrande declined to comment. They're normally so forthcoming and so transparent in their interactions. The property last month set up a risk management committee, aka a government takeover of the firm, including officials from Chinese state entities, and it has repeatedly said that this group and the company itself would actively engage with creditors and protect the legitimate interests of the parties involved. You note they said the legitimate interests. I wonder who decides whose interests are legitimate or not. Again, I would not want to be a non-Chinese citizen holding this debt right now. Despite efforts to engage in substantive dialogue, the group said it has received little more than vague assurances of intent, lacking in both detail and substance, and urged Evergrande not to make any asset sales without consulting first. The AHG, or Ad Hoc Group, expects and calls on the directors of Evergrande to strictly comply with their fiduciary duties, which require them, among other things, to have regard to and act in the best interests of their creditors. The Ad Hoc Group of Creditors. That's interesting. First of all, you never want to have ad hoc associated with your name, folks. That's just good advice overall. You know, like, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jack. I'll be your ad hoc pilot today. Yeah, your regular guy, he just quit, and I usually work in the baggage train, but I'll be your pilot today. Ooh, what's this button do? Beep. Yeah, you don't want to be an ad hoc investor, okay? And furthermore, I'd like to know, who are the members of this ad hoc group? Who are the wealth managers who are still holding this hot garbage after all the warnings, after all the writing on the wall? They're still holding this stuff. I'd really like to know who this law firm is representing. I doubt they want their names out there, but I think if I was an investor in one of these groups that's holding this garbage, I'd sure like to know. So BlackRock, Vanguard, whoever's out there that's holding this stuff, why don't you guys fess up to it? Why don't you just admit how reckless you've been with your investors' money? I'm sure the companies that hold this debt do not want the public learning who they are. But it's not just about Evergrande, folks. Don't forget there are all these other developers out there, and here we go. China Aoyuan won't pay bonds. Signals default is imminent. Thanks, Aoyuan. Events of default will occur, Chinese developer says. They want to preserve limited cash pending a debt restructuring. China Aoyuan Group won't make payments on $4 bonds and said they will trigger defaults on all other offshore debt, becoming the latest Chinese developer to succumb to the industry's liquidity crisis. And there are so many of these developers that are in default now, it is impossible to keep track of all of them. But let's throw Aoyuan onto the list. The company won't pay off a dollar note that matures Thursday or a separate bond due Sunday, it said in a Hong Kong Stock Exchange filing late Wednesday. The notes have a combined $688 million of principal outstanding, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. The builder also said it won't pay interest before the end of a 30-day grace period on two other notes. Those periods end Thursday, and the coupons total $15.3 million. And again, the coupon is the interest due, according to Bloomberg compiled data. Events of default will occur, or have occurred, under all other offshore financial indebtedness of the group, Aoyuan said in a statement. Said it is exploring asset sales and is in preliminary discussions with potential investors and purchasers. And here are these Aoyuan bonds trading way down here at about 15 cents on the dollar. Folks, that means you're not getting your money back if you're still holding this stuff. Aoyuan becomes the latest Chinese developer to renege on its debt obligations amid a cash crunch sparked by the crackdown on excessive borrowing in the industry. And this statement cracked me up. Aoyuan made the decision not to pay the debts to preserve its limited cash resources and maintain fairness among all of its creditors, pending a holistic debt restructuring. And what, you might ask, is a holistic debt restructuring? I don't know. Maybe that means, they get everybody together. You've got the lawyers and the accountants, and, it's holistic. So maybe they brought in a shaman. Maybe they'll burn a little bit of essential oils while they restructure the debt, lighten the mood a little bit, get their chakras in a line. It's a holistic debt restructuring. I would not want my investment to be holistically restructured. Again, put that right up there with ad hoc. And lastly, I just want to throw this one out. I caught this little gem in Bloomberg today. Can you believe these crooks are still trying this garbage? Greentown's dollar bond sale may reopen the market. A rare dollar bond sale from one of China's stronger developers will be a key test of appetite for the embattled sector. Greentown China Holdings is kicking off a sale of credit-enhanced green dollar bonds, according to a person familiar with the deal who is not authorized to speak about it publicly. The note has a standby letter of credit, or SBLC, guaranteeing the debt from China's Zhisheng Bank, the person said. And folks, you don't need to hear it from me. I'll just say it though, I would not touch this hot garbage with my worst enemy's money. And if you are curious, a credit-enhanced dollar bond is basically a bond that is issued by the developer, but it is being guaranteed by this Chinese bank. And I've been saying for months now, the Chinese banks are in no better shape than these developers. And why would they feel the need to guarantee their bonds?
Because they know all they sold you was a guaranteed piece of shit. That's all it is, isn't it? Hey, if you want me to take a dump in a box and mark it guaranteed, I will. I got spare time.
So long story short, folks, there's still just a huge mess going on in the Chinese real estate sector. This story is still snowballing. It's still getting worse. These actions by the PBOC shows that the Chinese banks are weaker than they're letting on. Forget what they say. Look what they do. You've got Aoyuan, yet another developer that's defaulted on their offshore dollar bonds. Again, continuing the pattern that any non-Chinese holders of these debt will get nothing. Got the decision by the PBOC to overrule these local governments and free up all of these escrow funds, which is going to screw some districts and help out some others, i.e. a selective bailout. And all of these foreign holders of Chinese debt are laughably getting together with their lawyers and threatening to sue Evergrande. And Evergrande doesn't care because they know the Chinese courts will never side with the foreign investor over the Chinese developers. So you have to appreciate the entertainment value alone of this story. Some of the things that these people are saying and doing are truly hilarious, but it does make it a little easy to forget that these are people's life savings being wiped out. So unfortunately, this situation is going to keep getting worse. And again, don't think you're immune to it, because if you have a 401k or an IRA or a pension, chances are you're holding at least some of this garbage. And I am very curious to learn who's really holding this stuff, but they're not exactly forthcoming with that information. Guys, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell. It helps me to keep this channel growing, and I'd be forever in your debt. Until next time, live small and dream big.